Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Stubbe. I am your host of the Agents of AI podcast, which is sponsored and associated by Capto. Capto is the leading creator of custom AI agents. We produce this podcast with people in our network, inclusive of clients, friends, allies, partners, all the above. And our main goal here is to highlight combination of AI thought leaders with also financial professionals, people within our community and again our ecosystem that we feel strongly deserve the limelight. But we have a special twist to our program. If it's your first time listening, our guests are anonymized and then revealed at the end. So please value them for their anonymous insights as we ask them questions, and then stay tuned as we reveal their full identity at the end. So I guess we'll call you the alien to start. Why don't you go off and introduce yourself, Mr. Alien, as we kind of get to know you a little bit better, but of course not revealing your name.
Sounds good. Okay. Thanks, Peter, for that introduction. And yeah, this alien image of myself, that's definitely the first time that I've brought forward that side of myself. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So a little bit about me without disclosing my name, which is definitely counterintuitive. I'll say this model, this format is interesting today. So I am someone who works I'm based in Canada, and I work in the transportation space. I am a director in a large transportation company. I work primarily in areas like business transformation or process improvement, continuous improvement, the convergence of process, the human interactions within our processes, the processes that contain various system interactions, the data underneath it. We play in all of those spaces, and it's transportation. Probably everywhere, but in Canada and North America, where our company exists, is definitely a traditional space, corporate space, business, an industry space, but definitely ripe for disruption and is definitely seeing lots of disruption hitting it. And so this topic of AI is definitely one of those topics that gets raised a lot. But yeah, it's good to discuss it in real world terms. What does it look like in the day to day? So yeah, I'd love to have this conversation today.
Very cool. All right, Mr. Alien, you're definitely already pulling the threads that we like to pull on this program of like the disruption of traditional industries or enterprises, and the role that AI plays in a true pragmatic, like, is it actually working sense? So excited to dive deeper with you on that. Why don't we still just kind of start at the basics? So what do you like most about your career and your role as somebody who owns transformation at a company that is, I guess, stereotypically traditional, we'll use that word, but what draws you to your position, and give the listeners a little bit more on that front.
Yeah, I think the very exciting thing about the role that I'm in goes back to when I was first introduced to this type of work. Typically, lots of people would refer to this work as continuous improvement or lean. Tools like the Six Sigma toolkit or the Lean toolkit, those are definitely in this space. And I was first introduced to it when I was actually part of an external audit, working for one of the big four accounting firms, and I was leading the IT audits at a trucking company in Canada here. And I was just talking to my counterpart. He was the C-suite person who was in charge of IT, but also was launching this new thing called continuous improvement. And so I read his job description for the manager he was trying to hire, and I just thought that it was absolutely crazy that you could get paid to do something called continuous improvement. And so I took his job that he was offering, and I developed, lots of skills along the way. That was about 2013, so a few years ago, 12 years ago. And I've been in this space ever since. The beautiful thing about this type of role is it's industry agnostic. So the core toolkit that you need can definitely be applied to any business, any business structure, nonprofit, for-profit, government, any institutional variations. So it's applicable everywhere. But what I really love about it is that it allows me to pursue my passion, which is getting into the details of the day-to-day of any organization and understanding how we can make the people processes side of that organization better, like less painful, less friction. How do we make next Monday less painful than last Monday for people when they come to work and make their jobs more fulfilling? I'm definitely about people. And so when I started learning the language of IT and learning the languages of different business processes and areas, all that stuff is in service of making people's day jobs and the many hours we spend better in that context.
Awesome. And well, I'll thank you right away for being a part of what I would consider like the revolution of workers that make it so that Mondays aren't a thing, or Mondays aren't a bad thing, right? So I think you may have even already touched on it a little bit with I learned something about the universal applicability of your role. To me, that's interesting, and I think might be something that's underappreciated about people that work within continuous improvement. But if you wouldn't mind either validating that or sharing like additional thoughts of like what do you feel is underappreciated about people that are in your job? Go ahead. Yeah.
No, that's a great question. I think oftentimes when you're in this type of role, and frankly, probably all of us that are in roles of leadership or influence within any organization, we should be looking through the lens of what value, what meaningful or tangible or measurable value am I bringing in my job? When you're somebody who's a salesperson, well, then that's typically measured by how much revenue you can generate for the business and how many orders you can, contract and then have your customers come and request that service. In our case, if you're a truck driver, that brings very measurable value, because if we don't put miles on that truck, that product doesn't get delivered. So there's parts of any organization that are easier to measure the value of. I think when it comes to measuring the value of continuous improvement, part of the discipline that I had to learn very early on, and that I lead and I train into the folks who come and work for me, is always be looking to understand what's the language of value by your different stakeholders. Like, what does the C-suite in your company perceive as value? What is a manager, a middle manager? What does he or she perceive, or what do they perceive as value? And then what is the person who's transacting right at the ground level every day, going to their work, going to their job, getting a batch of work to do? What does value mean to them, and how are they being measured on themselves? If you can help raise the value that somebody else is able to deliver in their roles, whether it's C-suite all the way down to the floor, that's a value that you're bringing to them. You're amplifying the value of others. That's typically what this type of role is doing. Inherently, it's not generating its own value per se, because it really is to try and increase the value or the outcome or the success or the objectives that organization has already set.
Yeah.
You're typically trying, in order for you to have a job in this kind of space, you have to demonstrate that you can amplify the value, whatever those definitions are, in all those different aspects of that organization.
Great. Well, it's really cool to hear that there are, a lot of roles out there in the world where it's not all about dollars and cents, right? Like as somebody who, again, I'll selfishly draw a personal comparison. I work in a community role. I touch clients that could be revenue driving. I touch our network. I touch our allies, people that are just supporters in general. And I think that it's, definitely, I find myself in circumstances where I do have to advocate and make it clear that, there should be appreciation for things that don't show up on the balance sheet, right? And it sounds like your role is one of those that aligns with that too. So thanks for highlighting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as far as, kind of the core purpose of the podcast here, we do talk about AI. We talk about the future of agentic AI. But we start from the beginning and we keep it really basic and simple. So for you, Mr. Alien, how did you get started? Do you remember when you first started using it? Who turned you on to it, or kind of what were some of the first things that you did with it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in our space where we are looking for all kinds of different tools and toolkits to bring to bear in, sometimes very complex organizations, the AI toolkit is definitely something that was emerging, still emerging, and probably will forever be emerging. But even early on, even for me, 3 to 5 years ago, is when I really started to see or hear about it. There were, other things like blockchain and other technologies that were being brought to the forefront in the trucking space. Autonomous vehicles. Obviously, there's some AI, there's machine learning, elements within some of those emergent technological themes. But I would say, even if I bring it to the present, I'm also someone who is active in my own community, like my physical community where me and my family live. And I started a nonprofit actually in our community that was really focused on innovation, but innovation within community. What does it mean to innovate our communities? which I found actually quite similar to how we try and innovate within corporations. And so within that community innovation context is actually where I first brought in one of my, a colleague of mine who I know within my physical community. He dove headlong into AI from all aspects. And so he's become like a local subject matter person for me. And I every month I host panel discussions within our community on the various innovation topics. I brought him up on the stage recently, and we talked about the whole gamut from like, what are people's perceptions of AI? And throughout that night, he very tangibly, just by using, some GPT, technology on his phone, demonstrated in live how powerful some of those tools can be in just sourcing insight, and just accelerating your starting point for a topic. He just picked a topic out of thin air, asked for the audience to give us some input. And so in the span of 90 minutes that night, I went from this technology is amazing, even just 1% of a glimpse of it, all the way through to I just want to bury my head in the sand because I don't know how. We're not going to just self-destruct with all of this. We lived the whole experience in 90 minutes. And everybody in that room did as well. And so it's a topic that I find a lot of tension within.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's lots of perspectives on it. There's a lot of fear relating to AI. I think for me, as I've been sitting with it, like conversations like that and others, I've really distilled it for myself down to, and I'm a glass half full alien. So my posture is, how can we use those types of technologies that we as humans are generating and creating to take care of the type of work that exists in our world today that is painful, that is not bringing value, both either to the person who's doing the work or even necessarily to the outcomes. It's non-value added work. It's waste, through a lean type of vocabulary. How do we get AI employees, like the language that Capto is using, which I love? How do we hire, so to speak, AI employees to do that level of work so that we can grow our businesses and be successful with the people that are still in our businesses, but give them work that's more meaningful, not 5% of the time, but 95% of the time. And so I see that's a real accelerant for me, is this AI capability can actually be brought to bear in a positive human serving way, not a job eliminating, now people are destitute, but a painful work eliminating so people can have more meaningful jobs. So I think that's my philosophical footing that I've evolved into. Now, how do I see it, and how is it touching my day job now? As an example, in the current business that I'm in, we are actually experimenting with just some AI functionality that will actually take some of our contracts, really complex contracts, and then translate that down into providing insight in front of the humans that are trying to make decisions, but they're doing it in a very ad hoc way. Lots of tribal knowledge, it's not sustainable. There's risk associated with our current process, but we're actually just leveraging that system capability or capacity to analyze and consume a lot of data quickly, even from disparate places, which also can be challenging for humans to try and sort through the noise to get to the single data point they need to make a decision. We're testing with how can we bring some of the AI abilities that are out there into our environment in an isolated way and prove the value, back to the value comment about how can we get this thing to do, 50% of the first work that a human currently does, so that the human can then apply their analytical faculties and other decision-making, more abstract or qualitative faculties to bear on the next chunk of work.
That's great. Well, thank you, Mr. Alien. And I think if you don't mind me kind of flipping the script a little bit on like what our typical line of questioning in this program is, you've identified this use case of like kind of like the contract creation and that being a bottleneck in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like maybe two related follow-ups on that. Like one, would you mind just kind of sharing a little bit more detail of what that use case actually looks like tactically today for people, and what you're trying to automate or use AI to alleviate? And then if you can follow up, like, it sounds like that was just like the most obvious thing, like the lowest hanging fruit for your organization to take on. Is that the stage that we're at in terms of how decisions are being made of like what processes do get handled by AI? Or maybe you could add a little bit more context of like why that use case was chosen over alternative ones.
Yeah, that's a good clarifying question. So in our case, there were a number of different use cases that were proposed and brainstormed, and to ask the question, like, here's a 101 on the technology kind of fundamentals that it can do. Now, how could it apply to our business? We brainstormed, say, half a dozen different use cases. Most of them were either accelerated revenue generation kind of enablers, or cost reduction or minimizing cost enablers. In our case, we chose one of the cost minimizers, which was tied to, so in our case, it's a trucking company. We have drivers, they get paid to deliver loads of product. And we have contracts that are agreements between the company and the driver on how much the driver will get paid for the core work that they do. And then if there's any kind of exceptions that happen along the way, then the driver will also get paid for kind of exceptional type work, or some may call that accessorial type pay. And so it's in the complexities that get translated from the agreement that the driver agreed to and the company agreed to. It's digitized. Sometimes it's scanned, into a system. It sits over here in system A. But the day-to-day transactional activity of what the driver did in the day, that gets transacted in system B, which is maybe our ERP or our transportation platform. And then that has to then get translated over to the payroll system for the payroll team to know how much to pay the driver. But sometimes there's an approval in the middle that says, yeah, we agreed to payment A for your core work, and then we agreed to payment B for this exceptional work.
Yep.
The system, we've automated capturing some of those steps along the way, but then sometimes we've actually lost. Like when it was a paper submission, the manager would have to sign the paper and then it would go to payroll. So the manager saw that transaction every time. Now we've automated the ability to take the paper. The driver can scan that in now in his truck. That paper gets scanned and it goes all the way through the transportation system, creates an entry, and then payroll can pay that driver. If we wanted to, we could just let that flow right through. The challenge is if the driver's asking for something that's exceptional pay, say they were delayed at a site,
right?
We need the manager to see that entry, and not only see it, but we need the manager to quickly know, what did the contract say that we agreed to, so the manager can actually approve it.
Got it. All right,
yeah.
Cool. Well, and also to bring it full circle here, like I do sympathize with maybe call it the doom and gloom of like, okay, can AI handle this process entirely, and have we automated ourselves out of jobs? I like, having worked in the automation space and now AI for many years, that fear has always been here, but you've just identified a case where there needs to be a human in the loop. There needs to be a human decision that gets made. And I think that is the time that person should be spending, rather than tracking down paper copies of contracts, right?
Exactly.
Cool. All right.
Yep.
Well, our final kind of prepared question before we move on to the big ending and a final fun tradition is that, I'm excited to learn about the community offering that you have and the nonprofit that you're doing. It sounds like you might be the perfect person to answer this question. Like, what's your advice for a peer or somebody who's just completely foreign to AI because they're still out there and maybe they are skeptical? Like, where should they start? What are the resources that they should use? Mr. Alien, you've come down on Earth and you've just discovered AI. Where would you start?
Yeah, I would start for sure by looking internally first. What are my reservations that keep me from even pulling my head out of the sand, metaphorically? And I don't say that facetiously. That was me, and some days it frankly is still me. But I think it's just that willingness to learn, and so that's a starting point. Without that, the conversation kind of ends there, frankly. So for me, it's, am I willing to at least even just open my eyes or listen to what is around me, what's happening? And from there, I would then start to turn to what are some of the sources that are common, like, and what's the language I'm hearing? I'm hearing about ChatGPT. I'm hearing about other tools like that. I might then just go on and ask, find a ChatGPT, source, or, Google it if you need to, and, find the tool, and then just start experimenting, just start testing it and just getting familiar with it. And I think that's kind of getting your toes wet. And you can also obviously be watching for different channels, whether that's, social media or otherwise, to just hear what is the conversation, but also intentionally trying to find perspectives on kind of maybe both ends of the broad spectrum on what are people saying, what's the doom and gloom, or what's the worst case scenario that we might envision, but then what's the best case scenario, and maybe what are some of the live examples right now that are playing out in the world where people are actually using AI for the betterment of humanity, not the extermination of humanity. And so I would try and take a snapshot of all of those things, and then come to your own conclusion, I guess, at that point.
Yeah. And then what I would add to that is once we reveal your identity, people can go and reach out to you for more advice. So thank you for that. All right. So we have one final fun tradition while you're still anonymized, Mr. Alien. we always like asking our guests, like, who is their favorite quote unquote agent of AI? This could be a peer, a thought leader, or influencer, somebody that you follow on in the social media space. But, think of it in the context of, who should be our next guest. You can choose just one. If you have a few, that's great as well. But yeah, let's hear it.
So this might sound a bit not self-serving, but maybe Capto serving. And I don't know if you've had this individual, and it would be hard to anonymize him, frankly.
Yeah.
But the person that I'm one of the shortlisted people that I'm most inspired by that are in the AI space is Alexi.
Okay.
And Marcel, but Alexi from Capto. So
yeah.
As an alien, Peter, you and I are only starting to get to know each other. Once you reveal my identity, this will make more sense. But I actually interviewed Alexei and Marcella a long time ago, well, 2 or 3 years ago when I was starting my own podcast, because I saw what they were doing in the AI space, but I also saw the humanity, the humanity of their agenda, that they were literally trying to do the same thing as me, which was, let's get rid of the painful work and give people more meaningful work. And I see that every post I see from Capto on LinkedIn, I just see that compass, or that kind of North Star, call it, or whatever, is definitely still shining pretty bright. And I'm inspired that there's humanity behind AI, and there's like stewardship of it as a technology. There's people that are intentionally using it with good intention, and are very technically sound at what they're doing, but that it's also for the same kind of agenda that I see AI serving, and why I would use AI in my future endeavors. So again, it won't help you with the next guest unless you want to try and find a way to morph his voice and his face. But Alexi, and by extrapolation, Marcella, for sure.
Okay, that's perfect. And I do thank you for the shout out, Mr. Alien. And I know that Alexi will appreciate those kind words as well. I'll speak for him on this call, but I'm sure he'll follow up too. Alexi's a great follow. He's anxious to get more followers and people to engage with, and he's a very open person. So I would encourage folks that haven't connected with him to do so. He's very active on LinkedIn, like you mentioned. I had another thought here, Mr. Alien, but it's escaping. Alexi was featured on our very first episode of the podcast, but we kind of took that as a way to just introduce him and his background and who Capto is. But you're right to remind me to call out that episode, because I think it's a great foundation for who Capto is for anybody who is interested in that aspect of our programming. So with that said, Mr. Alien, I guess we can, we don't have like the fancy drum rolls or anything like that yet, but what you can do is just remove your filter by, I think if you just reselect it, and then we'll reveal who you are. Hello.
There we are. There we are.
In recent episodes, I haven't even been shouting and announcing the person's name. I will let you do it. So please share more about yourself. Yep.
Very good. Thanks, Peter. So my name is Nathan Clausen, and I am currently the director of the lead to cash value stream within a trucking company in North America, based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, called Trimac Transportation. My daytime work, you could say, is with Trimac, and I work in this process and technology space, working with teams and collectively as a company working to optimize the process layer so that we're able to scale and grow and achieve our collective objectives. The AI topic is definitely one that is more and more emergent in our internal conversations and external facing conversations as well.
Great. Well, Nathan, let me say that like many of our other guests, but you especially, really appreciated the discussion today. I think that there was a unique angle that you brought in. Again, I'll use the word traditional industries or traditional enterprises. I think it's really important that we shine a light on the use cases and opportunities in those more quote unquote traditional spaces. So thank you for being somebody that is helping us to evangelize that. I think that that's a core principle of what listeners and followers can expect from this program to come. We want to shine a light on things that aren't being just parroted or evangelized already. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time. Nathan, I know you are also active on LinkedIn, and we've already interacted a lot there. I guess if there's anything else in terms of how people could potentially get in touch with you or learn more, please share. But otherwise, we'll leave that as the call to action, and hope that everybody enjoyed the episode.
Very good. LinkedIn it is. Yeah, and that's the best way to connect with me, Peter. So thanks for the shout out.
All right. Thanks so much. All right.